create something that is a little aspirational and a little visionary, right? It should be a little bit out of your reach as you're doing it, but don't make it so far out that you're not able to execute it really, really well, because the power of success is not only coming up with great ideas, it's the follow through and the ability to execute on those. And I think that is somewhat what has shaped my philosophy around my catalytic journey.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering Catalyst to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations. And I'm thrilled today to have time with Megan Noel. Welcome, Megan.
Hi, it's so great to be here, Shannon.
Stoked to have you. And let me explain why, because people are gonna be like, holy moly. So Megan was named a top woman in PR by PR News and is a 40 under 40 recipient by PR Week. She's a senior communications professional with 2 decades of experience working with global companies on the evolving role of communications functions and how to optimize it to be a central force in helping the C-suite navigate complex stakeholder demands, which is our lived reality every day now. She's currently the Global President of Corporate Affairs and a member of the executive leadership team at Golan. She's charged with driving practice growth globally, expanding service offerings and IP alongside the 150 other corporate affairs professionals across the world to support clients' business, reputation, and transformation objectives. Previously, she led communications and corporate affairs at PwC US and Mexico. And so that's the high level, but I would love to hear about your journey through the catalytic lens, maybe sharing a couple of highlights that can help us see your catalytic nature.
Yeah, I love that. I've always been a builder throughout my entire career, and I have been attracted to roles where you can build and create and frankly be a bit entrepreneurial. Even within large organizations. Right out of school, I joined Adtalem, which is the largest communications agency in the world. And it was right at the time where businesses were sort of grappling with, should they have more responsibility to give back to the communities in which they serve and where they operate, and how do they take care of the environment. And corporate social responsibility and sustainability departments didn't exist then. And so, Richard Edelman, to his credit, had great foresight in that there was opportunity there, and hired people like myself to work with some of the most formidable companies on the, Fortune 500 list to not only think about stakeholder management, but think about ways that they can meaningfully use their business resources to support communities, workforces, et cetera. And so, did that for a number of years, and then popped into PwC, where I really had the opportunity that the comms department was at an inflection point, and they wanted to really build it out into something different and modernize it. Think about this. This was 2014, the sort of advent of social media and how that really changed how people communicated in the 24/7 news cycle. And so, had the opportunity there to really build a team from the ground up and shape it into what we consider a modern day corporate affairs department, and be able to be responsible for 250 people's careers, which is just such an immense responsibility and privilege. And now today, I am sitting at Golan, which is another amazing global communications agency, and have the opportunity to continue to build out a team there and help companies at this intersection of such immense regulatory pressure, another change in how information gets sourced and fact checked or not fact checked, and navigate a new administration, and new business roles for CEOs. And so I've loved the challenge of coming in and taking something that maybe is good and making it great, or something that's great and flipping on its head to be fit for purpose for what's next.
Yes, no matter, even if we're crushing it right now, you never know what happens tomorrow. So that adaptability is super important.
Absolutely. I think adaptability and agility is
Agility,
key.
totally. So how do you relate to the concept of Catalyst, and how has that helped you, become a successful executive?
You know, I didn't know I was a catalyst. When I started to do more research on that, you had this aha moment, like, oh my God, I am a catalyst. And I think really fast. I can process large amounts of information, and I am comfortable being uncomfortable and moving things forward. I had this great CEO that I worked for at PwC. His name was Tim Ryan, and he was formidable and influential in so many parts of my career. But I remember when he first gave me the opportunity to have my first leadership role at the firm. And I was talking to him and, explaining this is what I want to do. Here's all the things I want to do. And he said, hold up a minute, Megan, create a B-level strategy and create A-level execution. And I thought about that a lot. It's got to be better than average, but good enough to execute. And then you got to execute the heck out of it flawlessly.
Yes.
And that mindset has taken me throughout my whole catalytic journey. Create something that is a little aspirational and a little visionary, right? It should be a little bit out of your reach as you're doing it, but don't make it so far out that you're not able to execute it really, really well, because the power of success is not only coming up with great ideas, it's the follow through and the ability to execute on those. And I think that is somewhat what has shaped my philosophy around my catalytic journey.
It's so spot on, and it's such a differentiator for people who can show up that way, because there's a lot of, and in your intro, it's like talking about creating IP and having products, which is important. But to your point, it's like it's not the idea per se, it's the ability to actually bring people along so that they can execute on that journey. Yeah.
Yeah, I think especially within large organizations, there's a lot to navigate within matrix environments. So,
Mm.
the old saying, keep it simple, stupid, like actually really applies, because even to make small changes within large organization takes immense amount of effort. And so if you're able to be surgical and clear about your strategy and execute it really well, that not only builds confidence in yourself, but build confidence in others that you could do it and do it really, really well. And maybe perhaps do it at a larger scale. So it's definitely something that I use as my guidepost each and every day when I'm making decisions.
Follow-up question to that, but it might be a pivot to, you talked about like Edelman and PwC and the opportunities that you had, the change that you embraced, the practices that you built out. I'm wondering if I'm guessing there were challenges along the way, and how you overcame those challenges. But connected to that is, what are some of the tips for excellent execution of those aspirational strategies?
Yeah. Of course, right? Who doesn't? They'd be lying to you if you don't have resistance or there aren't challenges along the way. I think a big part of what being a catalyst is that you have strong resilience and you're able to then sort of get back up again and keep going. That strong stomach really is going to be necessary when you're driving any sort of change, especially transformational change. So to have a little bit of, it's okay. There's going to be resistance, and making sure that you're thinking about the entire change management process. During my time at PwC, I was lucky to oversee a team of change management professionals as part of my role. I had no formal change management experience before that job. And those individuals that I manage ended up teaching me the most about effective change management and what it takes, and how communications and clarity of vision and clarity of that communications is really important, and bringing people along And so I have taken some of those change management principles and really applied that to each and every single thing that I do every day, because I think they are relevant when you're trying to turn left or turn right when you were going straight, and helping people understand the why, what's in it for them, what's the benefit, and then what I need from them in order to make it work, and that clarity and that consistency. And so there's some of that that I think is so critical to anybody's journey, and being able to understand good change is a gift.
Oh, I have so many questions for you. It's interesting to think about the role that communications plays in change management. So, sort of a two-part question. I'd love for you to speak about that, but also we have this mastermind called the Catalyst Leadership Trust, and people can bring burning issues. And one of the execs brought us the question of, how is change management changing today? And I know you're not a change management professional, that maybe you got certified after, I don't know, but I would love your thoughts about both of those things. And I'm guessing that there's like a connection, a thread between them.
Yeah. So I now consider myself a change management professional
Great.
after having done it for
Perfect.
so long, and helping an organization of 75,000 help drive change in each and every day. I think the first part of your question, I think comms and change are inherently connected, and why, whether they're organizationally, they sit side by side, or many organizations are starting to come together under a corporate affairs banner. I think that you can't really have good change without good comms. The comms is where the rubber meets the road, but the change management principles are critical for communicators when they're trying to help drive action, especially around operational changes that they need to be done. So I think that they should go hand in glove together. And, I think for anyone that is trying to drive change today, it's no secret that the only constant in organizations is change, right? No
Absolutely.
business is standing still. There's this amazing stat that I keep referencing that came out of Davos a couple years ago, from PwC, by the way, and it said 50% of the companies that exist today don't think they'll exist in 10 years. That's staggering, staggering. 1 in 2 don't think they're going to be here. So what does that mean? In order for them to be here, they need to invest in new products and innovations. They need to invest in new markets. They need to change their entire business models in order to exist. They need to change ways of working. All of that is rooted in transformation, right? And so whether you have change management in your title or not, you need to understand the concepts in order to move forward and do it at a pace that not only can keep up with the competition and make sure that your business is viable, but equally as important is bringing your organizations along so they understand the why and are bought into it and will help you achieve that goal, especially as we look at organizations like, look at Amazon, for example, that started out as a retail online bookseller. And now today, Amazon is frankly in every industry. Effective change management enabled that company to be able to continue to reinvent itself continuously and stay not only relevant, but super competitive in today's market.
Yes. And I'm wondering if you have advice, because just listening to that as a person who has a positive relationship with change, it's like the change fatigue is
Yeah.
so real right now. And if you think of a standard distribution, change curve, even when the catalysts are getting change fatigue, it's a lot. And people are, last year we heard a lot of companies talking about having to do more with less, which we don't
Yeah.
might not be talked about at the top line as much, but it's still the reality for how, how organizations are operating. And so I'm wondering if you have advice for how to navigate, because you're like, yeah, we need to invest in sort of, new products and new innovations, new business models, new ways of working like that. It's a lot of change at the same time. So maybe what's the role of a comms person in this, or just, from your perspective as a Catalyst executive, what advice do you have for people?
Both from a Catalyst executive and as a change in comms professional, it's all about ruthless prioritization. You can't be all things to all people, and you can't do all things at once really well. It goes back to Tim Ryan's advice: do a B-level strategy and A-level execution. You can only do A-level execution, maybe one or two things. So it's about picking and choosing what changes you want to bring now, today, and why, explaining that, executing on it, and then continuing to move. People can always change. It's when you're trying to throw change here, 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 and here that people start to say, that's too much. I can't be all things to all people. But this and this and this and this and this feels better, right? And also, frankly, the transparency in communications around, especially from a business strategy standpoint. I spent a lot of time talking to our clients today about how much do you think your employees understand your business strategy, the business of the business, how you make money, how you go through your supply chain, what it means for them. And there's a lot of opportunity to still do that internal education, especially with employees, about the business of the business and the strategy behind that and the why, so that you can bring them along of when you need to make a change or a pivot. It becomes much easier to comprehend because they've been brought along the entire way versus just coming to them and saying, well, now we got to be in this new market, or now we got to be in this new area, but not having them be brought along for the entire story and strategy, just being brought in 50% of the time. So to me, communications goes hand in glove with the good strategy in order to drive the change.
I love the recognition that, I mean, my guess is that the majority of employees don't actually understand the business of the business and how crucial that is before you even, I mean, there's partly a strategy in there, but then what's the supporting strategy? One of the things we often talk about, and you and I got to talk about a little bit before we hit record, is in order to create change, you have to be able and bring people along, which is what you're talking about. There's a little, not a little bit, there's a lot of the contextualization of what's in it for them, what's their worldview, how are you connecting with, what is going to be meaningful for them around the why and all of that. And so as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about this tension between the high level transparency and strategy, but also understanding like almost the hyper personalization that you need to bring to engage people to reduce the friction. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the great thing about today's world, especially with the integration and adoption of AI, is that personalization can happen much more easily. Where it used to be able to happen, probably a super manual process or not at all, we can start to do personalization of what this means for you, Megan, versus what this means for you, Shannon, very differently, to sort of meet people where they are with the help of technology. And as a communicator, I've used AI and other tech-enabled tools a lot to drive that personalization, to really get down to, this is what this business strategy means for you and your role and your career. And that has been helpful in facilitating change. You certainly can't do that all the time, right? But it's also really helpful in thinking about change as all your different audiences and what buckets they're in and what spaces of the change curve that they'll be at, and starting to think about it through their lens so that when you are communicating different things, that you can take it through their eyes, even if it can't be hyper personalized. But doing that exercise right from the start, not only as a leader, but just like a good boss, that's going to be helpful to people, that you really understand and empathize with where they're at. And, I think empathy has been a big leadership principle that we're now talking about, and it's great. I think as catalysts, we are so hard charging that sometimes we forget that or I'll speak for myself, that
No,
sometimes we need to be,
I'm into.
we need to take a pause and be empathetic, that not everybody is as excited or energized by change. And so that has, I think, not only thinking through the lens of the different audiences and what the change means for them, but equally having that empathy that they may not see it as the way I see it, and trying to meet them where they are has been super helpful.
Spot on. It's really interesting. I think it was a New York Times article about how AI is actually more empathic or empathetic. And I love this specific call to action for catalysts. I mean, so many catalysts, for obvious reasons that I know, use AI in lots of different ways. But I love it I honestly hadn't connected the dots about, taking some of the work and the emotional labor that we have to do about trying to contextualize and understand some of the, user personas or groups that we might be working with, and just sort of outsourcing that a little bit with intentionality to reduce the friction.
Yeah, I think AI can be a powerful tool in so many different ways. And it can help being your literal, co-pilot in doing some of the work. I've seen, some CEOs say that they're now using it to help develop the next stage of strategy. And that's amazing, right? And I certainly think that the burden falls on us as professionals to do that execution and do it well, but it can be another tool in our toolbox along the way.
Okay, so I had sort of nudged the conversation going back to the biggest challenges that you've had driving change in large organizations. Is there another challenge that you've dealt with and overcome that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think with any organization and any new opportunity, you're gonna create friction or have some resistance. And one of the things that I always think about in my experience is, did you did you leave it better than it started? And what is the impact that you're driving there? What will you be remembered as? And I think that right now I'm in a place at Golan where I am helping the organization really take advantage of its amazing reputation across the world as a fabulous agency. And how do we build upon that to create new opportunities for our clients and for our talent? And so as I'm going through the change right now, it's been so fun to hear about what has worked, what hasn't, why, and what is the other pathway that we need to get there. And so, as I'm now 4 months into my new job and being able to break down some of the perceived or real barriers has been exciting. I've learned that you have to ask a lot of questions. I am immediately a go to action type person, right? There's a problem, I want to solve it. It's linear, very linear to me, A to B. And what I've learned as I've been trying to build this team right now is to be a little bit more intentional, to slow down, to ask a bunch of questions. Why is that perceived wall or that real wall up there? How was it created? What's keeping it up there? What's creating the environment that it is now? What do we think can change about it? What do we think can't, right? What will be the impacts if we change it? Intended or unintended, right? And by slowing down and asking more questions, and you hear that a lot from leaders and especially CEOs as they get to the top, that they're spending a lot more time asking really poignant questions of their teams than just solving the problems. It really helps you not only understand when you press go, it's the right answer and why, but all of the impacts that you'll have along the way, positive and or negative, and being able to help do that. And it's such a blessing and a privilege to build teams, and to be able to do that now and have another shot at that is really special.
It's such an important reminder. I made a comment earlier today to someone who, I shared my bias because I was like, are all companies, if we have the change curve and the catalysts are on the left, are all companies culturally going to have to move a little bit to the left? And we just my sort of inference was we can just ignore the back end of the change curve. And it's like, no, actually, there can be some really interesting wisdom in the people who are as you're coming into the change, when they're sitting there going, no, we've done this before, we failed. And the intention to sit down and at least listen to the minefields or the things that have happened or the things that might help you mitigate risk can feel really painful and slow, I'll say for myself, but can be so illuminating and important. So thank you for sharing that.
I will also say that for catalysts who are always there on the like far, left end, ready to go with the change curve, and going back to building teams, I have in the process of building my leadership team, and it's been so fun to just be able to pick out people who will be compliments to myself.
Totally.
And diversity in so many different forms that perhaps as I look at different individuals, people that will complement me and maybe not be so much of a catalyst, but will be great conveners or will
That's
be
right.
super empathetic or will be great executors. And so, how do we as catalysts recognize our strengths, harness them, but surround ourselves with people that will perhaps complement our weaknesses and say the extra 4 sentences or spend the extra 3 hours with somebody where we're impatient and we're like, I've already moved on. That person will say, I got you, Megan. And I'm going to
Totally.
go then spend the, so and so amount of time to support the individuals who may or may not be quite there, but I'll get them there so that we can all move fast. But you continue to break down those barriers over here while I take care of those folks over here so that we're all riding in this together and all have a role. But I have found that in rebuilding teams so important because you can't have all catalysts. You all run
That's right.
away. And
Totally.
there'll be no one left to sort of
Totally.
do the things. And so recognizing your strengths and other people that will complement you, I think is another place that I've learned more about myself in this journey.
I totally agree. I had this like massive spreadsheet in my last big corporate role because it was exactly that. It was like, I need some translators. I need some bridgers. I need people who straddle the ops and people thing, and spot on. All right. I want to ask you a question because like when we work with large organizations to help them identify their catalysts and sort of activate whatever the biggest areas of opportunity, or you talked earlier about like whatever the key top strategic priorities are. We usually also try and curate for diversity, but it doesn't mean that we always have someone from a comms background or the comms team as part of these, these teams, these functional teams. Do you have advice for catalysts who are trying to drive change and need to work with the comms teams internally to help with reducing the resistance?
Yeah, I think the beauty of the communications functions over the past couple of years, and I think the pandemic accelerated this, is that more and more communications teams are having a bird's eye view across the organization. It's really the comms team and the CEO that are seeing all the different audiences and stakeholders inside and out. And then helping the CEO and the broader C-suite make those choices. If we do this, it's going to serve this community, but not that community, or this is the trade-off. And, good comms teams and professionals can help you trend spot where your potential wins could be very early and maybe create those change champions that you want to lead into. Equally, they're going to help you maybe transport some of the detractors or the types of communities and concerns that you can expect, or help say, gosh, if we do this, this goes back to ruthless prioritization. We have this going on, this going on, this going on. So even if this is the best laid plan, there's these 3 other things that we need to do as a business. And is this really the right time to be doing that? I used to spend a lot of time in a large organization as the comms leader, talking to business leaders that wanted to drive change, and then talking to them about timing of that. And is that the right change to do now? Because we have these other things. Can this wait a little bit, or can we speed this up? And good change is right. Go back to B-level strategy, A-level execution is not just what's the great idea, but how will you execute it? And then what are the possible distractions? And so we would spend a lot of time pacing the cadence of change in order to make sure that the business was successful. Because ultimately we wanted to move forward. We wanted it to be great. But knowing that there were these 3 other things that were going at the same time that would distract people, it could create a higher potential for failure. So good comms organizations will help you navigate some of those complexities.
You're blowing my mind again. And it also is, I hate admitting some of these biases or, preconceptions that I have. But it's like, I was thinking about it much more in a like, how can the communications team help the Catalyst teams, accelerate through leveraging their communications? But really the inverse is the more powerful one, which is like, you as the communications are literally seeing, because sometimes the organization will be like, here's our 6 strategic things. It's probably too many. And you guys are like, but here's the ones that we're doing this quarter. Here's the 2 that we're doing this quarter or whatever it is. So the insight and guidance for a good communications team, I'm guessing that has a good relationship with the C-suite so that they are also ruthlessly prioritizing. It's sort of like the magic decoder ring, or like, here's the secrets of what you guys should be aligning on.
Yeah, I see the comms function really helping translate great strategy into execution. And if done properly, you're helping drive awareness and understanding, but then moving them to action. So even if you don't consider yourself a change management expert, I think all of us in comms, especially for large corporations, are trying to do communications to drive some action. Either you're driving a reputation, raising awareness of something, changing perceptions, or asking employees to do something that you want them to do that will serve the business well or protect the business. And so we are not just doing comms for comms sake, we're doing comms to support business objectives that move people to act.
Amazing. I hope everyone listens to that and will action on it. All right, as we wrap up, I would love to hear about your favorite catalyst, who inspires you, and past or present, and why do they stand out to you?
Yeah, I'll continue to use Tim Ryan, who was one of my CEOs, and he is definitely a catalyst. He is inspirational in so many different ways. Always 2 steps ahead, thinking about what's next. Absorbs a ton of information really quickly and then can translate that. But also has the ability to take that complex information and make it really simple. He is a man that doesn't use big words, despite being a CEO and sitting with CEOs, is always using plain spoken and has deep empathy for many people across organizations. And I think that's, something so special as you look at leaders who can sort of somewhat be detached as they sit in the proverbial ivory tower, and to always remember that you're there to serve your organization. And I think that's been so inspiring, working with CEOs and individuals that are selfless in that way and use their gifts to support others.
Yeah, so he sounds like a great mentor. Like he saw you and the value and was invested in your success as well, which is always so inspiring.
Yes, definitely.
Megan, thanks so much for this conversation. I got a lot of insights. I would love to continue the conversation at some point. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Shannon. It was great to be on.
To our listening audience, again, thank you for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about how to create bold, powerful change in the world, be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, or go to the website at catalystconstellations.com. And if you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, please take 10 seconds to rate it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And of course, if you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way. Thanks again.